They called humans the weakest species in the galaxy. No natural weapons, no thick hide, no venomous fangs or razor claws. When the Galactic Council stripped humanity of all advanced weaponry and exiled them to the death world of Vidania, they thought they were signing our death warrant. They were wrong. What they didn't understand was that humans don't need claws when they have creativity. We don't need fangs when we have determination, and we certainly don't need their weapons when the entire planet becomes our forge. This is the story of Dr. Sarah Chen, xenobotanist turned warrior, who proved that the most dangerous weapon in the universe isn't made of metal or energy, it's made of human ingenuity and an unbreakable will to survive. When civilization strips you of everything, you build it back from nothing. When they take your tools, you make better ones. And when they think they've won, you show them what humanity really means. The galaxy is about to learn why you never corner a human with nothing left to lose. Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the transport ship's holding cell, watching through the small porthole as Vidania grew larger in the viewport. The planet looked like a green marble swirled with brown and gold, beautiful from orbit but deadly up close. She had studied the reports during her years at the Galactic Research Institute. Vidania was classified as a Class X death world, a planet so hostile that even the galaxy's most advanced civilizations avoided it. Perfect for a human prison, the Zephyrian Council members had decided. 30 minutes to atmospheric entry, announced the ship's automated system in the universal trade language. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to push down the fear gnawing at her stomach. 3 months ago, she had been one of the most respected xenobotanists in the galaxy, working alongside brilliant minds from dozens of species to catalogue and understand plant life across known space. Now she was prisoner 4,847 of 5,000, part of humanity's punishment for what the Council called excessive military expansion. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity had been trying to join the galactic community for decades, slowly building their technology and military to meet the standards required for membership. When they finally achieved the necessary technological benchmarks, the Council had declared them a threat. Too aggressive, they said. Too warlike. Too dangerous to be given access to advanced galactic weaponry. So they had stripped humanity of every piece of technology above basic metalworking, confiscated every weapon more advanced than a simple blade, and decided to exile 5,000 humans to Vidania as an example to any other species that might have similar ambitions. Sarah touched the small metal pendant around her neck, the only personal item they had allowed her to keep. It contained a compressed data crystal with her life's work, thousands of plant specimens and their genetic codes, growth patterns and chemical compositions. She had managed to hide it during the processing, and somehow the Zephyrian guards had missed it during their searches. The ship shuddered as it hit the planet's atmosphere. Through the porthole, Sarah could see the green canopy rushing up to meet them, an endless ocean of alien vegetation that stretched to every horizon. The transport's engines whined as the pilot fought against Vidania's dense atmosphere and aggressive weather patterns. Lightning flickered between towering clouds, and Sarah could see massive storm systems swirling across the planet's surface. "Attention, prisoners," came the cold voice of Commander Thresh, the Zephyrian officer overseeing the exile operation. "You will be dropped at the designated coordinates with basic survival supplies. No rescue missions will be attempted. No communication with off-world vessels will be permitted. You have been provided with protein synthesizers that will function for exactly 1 standard year. After that, you will need to sustain yourselves through whatever means this planet provides." Sarah's fellow prisoners stirred uneasily in their cells. She could hear quiet conversations in a dozen human languages, voices tight with fear and anger. Most of them were military personnel or weapons specialists, exactly the people the Council had wanted to eliminate from human society. A few, like herself, were scientists and engineers who had been deemed too valuable to enemy interests. The ship's cargo bay doors began to cycle open with a mechanical grinding sound. Sarah felt her ears pop as the pressure equalized with Vidania's thick atmosphere. The air that flowed into the ship was humid and heavy, carrying strange scents that her enhanced human nose couldn't immediately identify. Sweet and sharp, with an underlying chemical tang that suggested the presence of unknown compounds. Chen, Sarah M., prisoner 4,847, called a guard. Sarah's cell door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. "Move to disembarkation zone 7. She gathered her few possessions: a basic survival kit containing water purification tablets, a thermal blanket, a first aid kit, and a combat knife that looked almost primitive compared to the energy weapons she had seen Zephyrian soldiers carry. The knife's handle was worn but solid, the blade made of simple carbon steel. It might be the most advanced technology she would have access to for the foreseeable future. The cargo bay was chaos. 5,000 humans were being processed through various exit points, their voices echoing off the metal walls as they said goodbye to cellmates and tried to organize themselves into groups. Sarah recognized some faces from the journey. Dr. James Martinez, a geologist she had worked with on Mars. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, a tactical officer she had met during a joint research mission. Elena Vasquez, a young engineer fresh out of Earth's Technical Academy. "Sarah!" Elena's voice cut through the noise. The young woman pushed through the crowd, her dark hair disheveled and her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do out there. I design atmospheric processes, not survival gear." Sarah put a steady hand on Elena's shoulder. "We stick together," she said firmly. "Group survival is our best chance." She looked around at the other prisoners nearby. "Anyone who wants to form a coalition, speak up now. We have about 10 minutes before they push us out." Dr. Martinez approached, his weathered face grim but determined. "I'm with you. My geological training might help us find suitable shelter locations." Behind him came Colonel Webb, a tall man with graying temples and steady eyes that had seen too much combat. "I can provide tactical assessment and group organization," Webb offered. "Military logistics are still relevant even without advanced weapons." More people joined their impromptu group. A hydroponics specialist named David Kim, a materials engineer named Lisa Thompson, and a combat medic named Robert Santos. By the time the guards began herding them toward the exit ramps, they had assembled a group of 12 people with complementary skills. The ramp extended toward a cleared landing zone carved out of the alien forest. Sarah got her first real look at Vidania's surface as she stepped onto the metal walkway. The trees were enormous, their trunks easily 50 meters in circumference and stretching up into the misty canopy at least 200 meters above. Their bark had a strange iridescent quality, shifting between deep browns and metallic purples as the light hit it from different angles. The undergrowth was equally alien and intimidating. Ferns with leaves the size of dinner tables grew between twisted vines that seemed to pulse with their own internal rhythm. Flowers the size of human heads hung from branches overhead, their petals displaying colors that had no names in any Earth language. Everything was oversized, as if the planet's dense atmosphere and rich soil had encouraged all plant life to grow beyond reasonable limits. "Temperature reading 32 degrees Celsius, announced Colonel Webb, checking his basic environmental scanner. "Humidity at 87%. Atmospheric pressure roughly 1.4 times Earth standard." Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the thick air fill her lungs. Her xenobotany training kicked in automatically as she observed the plant life around them. The way the leaves were structured suggested they were designed to process the dense atmosphere efficiently. The unusual coloration of the bark indicated the presence of metallic compounds in the soil. Most interesting was the way certain plants seemed to be generating small electrical discharges. She could see tiny sparks jumping between some of the flowering vines. "Fascinating," she murmured, pulling out a small notebook from her survival kit. "This ecosystem is far more complex than the Council's survey reports indicated. Fascinating or not, we need shelter before nightfall," Webb said pragmatically. "Martinez, what does the terrain look like from a geological standpoint?" The older scientist was examining the ground around the landing zone. "Volcanic soil, very rich in minerals. The bedrock underneath is probably basalt, which means there should be natural cave formations nearby. We'll want to head toward those hills to the east." As the last groups of prisoners were disembarked, the transport ships began lifting off, their engines creating small cyclones of debris and alien pollen. Sarah watched them disappear into the cloudy sky, carrying away the last connection to the civilization that had exiled them. Around the clearing, other groups of humans were having similar discussions, some breaking apart into smaller teams, while others tried to maintain larger coalitions. "Let's move," Webb decided. "We have maybe 6 hours of daylight left, and I don't want to find out what this place is like after dark." Their group gathered their supplies and began hiking toward the hills Martinez had identified. The going was difficult through the dense undergrowth, but Sarah found herself fascinated despite their dire circumstances. Every plant they passed was something new, something that shouldn't exist according to established xenobotanical theory. The electrical discharge flowers, for instance, seemed to be generating power through some kind of biochemical process she had never encountered. When she carefully approached one and held her knife blade near it, a small arc of electricity jumped to the metal. Elena noticed her experiment and came over to investigate. "That's impossible," the engineer said, studying the flower. "Biological systems can't generate that kind of electrical potential without specialized organs. Earth electric eels manage it," Sarah pointed out. "But nothing on this scale in a plant." She made careful notes in her notebook, sketching the flower's structure and recording her observations about the electrical discharge. As they pushed deeper into the forest, Sarah began to notice patterns in how the plants were arranged. Certain species seemed to grow in specific relationships to each other, forming what looked almost like natural circuits. The electrical flowers were always positioned near certain types of metallic bark trees, while particular ferns seemed to cluster around both. "Colonel Webb," she called out as they paused to rest and check their bearings, "I think we need to be very careful about what we touch in this forest. I'm seeing some kind of organized electrical network in the plant life." Webb frowned and came back to examine what she had discovered. "You think it's dangerous?" "I think it's sophisticated," Sarah replied, pointing out the pattern she had observed. "Look at how these different species are positioned. It's almost like they're components in some kind of biological electrical system. The flowers generate power, the trees conduct it, the ferns seem to be regulating the flow." Dr. Martinez joined the discussion. "Could explain some of the mineral readings I'm getting. The soil composition changes in a grid pattern, like there's an underground network of different materials." As if responding to their conversation, one of the nearby trees began to emit a soft humming sound. The electrical flowers around it brightened slightly, and Sarah could see small sparks traveling up the metallic veins in the bark. "We should keep moving," Webb said uneasily. "I don't like the idea of camping near something that might electrocute us in our sleep." But Sarah was already thinking ahead, her scientific mind racing through the possibilities. If the plants could generate and conduct electricity, then they might also be capable of much more. Her data crystal contained information about thousands of plant species from across the galaxy. If she could figure out how to crossbreed or genetically modify some of these Vidania species with her archived specimens. "Actually," she said slowly, "I think we should establish our base camp as close to this electrical network as safely possible." "Why?" Elena asked. Sarah smiled for the first time since their exile began. "'Cause I think we just found our power source. And if my theories are correct, it might be capable of much more than just lighting our campfire." As they continued their journey toward the hills, Sarah's mind was already working through dozens of possibilities. The Council had stripped humanity of advanced technology, thinking they were reducing them to primitive survival, but they had made a critical error. They had left the humans with the one thing that had always made them truly dangerous: their ability to see potential where others saw only problems, and to turn any environment into a weapon if they were determined enough. 3 weeks into their exile, Sarah Chen had transformed from a displaced scientist into something the galaxy had never seen before: a xenobotanical weapons engineer. The cave system Martinez had located in the eastern hills had proven perfect for their needs, providing shelter from Vidania's violent weather patterns while keeping them close enough to the forest's electrical grid to conduct her increasingly ambitious experiments. She knelt beside an improvised laboratory table made from flat stones, carefully examining a hybrid plant specimen under a magnifying glass crafted from water and a curved piece of transparent tree resin. The plant looked innocent enough: delicate purple leaves surrounding a cluster of what appeared to be normal seed pods. But when she touched a metal probe to one of the pods, it released a burst of paralytic spores that instantly killed a small lizard-like creature they had been using for testing. "Results?" asked Elena, who had become Sarah's primary assistant in what the group had started calling the Botanical Weapons Program. "Toxicity level is roughly 20 times higher than the baseline Vidania species," Sarah reported, making notes in her expanded journal. "The paralytic compound from the archived Kepler 442b specimen has successfully bonded with the electrical storage organs of the local discharge flowers. When triggered by electrical contact, it releases an aerosol cloud with approximately 15-meter effective radius." Elena shook her head in amazement. 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have believed it was possible to genetically modify plants using nothing but cross-pollination and selective breeding. "The electrical nature of Vidania's ecosystem makes it uniquely adaptable," Sarah explained, carefully storing the specimen in a containment box made from woven tree fibers. "The bioelectrical activity essentially supercharges the normal evolutionary processes What should take generations of breeding can happen in days. Colonel Webb approached their workspace carrying his daily perimeter report. Over the past weeks, he had organized their 12-person group into an efficient survival unit, while Sarah worked on her botanical experiments. Dr. Martinez had mapped the local cave systems and identified several potential defensive positions, while David Kim had established a sustainable food production system using modified local plants. "We've got visitors," Webb announced grimly. Long-range scouts have identified 3 separate groups of what appear to be indigenous predators moving toward our area. Each group is roughly 15 to 20 individuals, moving in coordinated patterns that suggest pack intelligence. Sarah looked up from her work. "Indigenous predators? I haven't seen any animal life larger than those little lizards. That's because they've been avoiding the electrical grid areas," Dr. Martinez said, joining the conversation. "But I've found tracks and scat samples at the edges of our territory. Big tracks. Whatever these things are, they're roughly human-sized, possibly larger." Webb spread out a hand-drawn map of the area. "They're approaching from 3 directions, moving slowly but deliberately. My guess is they've figured out that we're here, and they're planning some kind of coordinated assault." "How long before they reach us?" Sarah asked, already calculating how many of her experimental weapons were ready for field testing. 2 days, maybe 3 if the weather slows them down. Sarah stood up and walked to the mouth of their cave, looking out at the alien forest that had become both their prison and their salvation. Over the past weeks, she had learned to read the patterns in the electrical network, understanding how different plant species communicated through bioelectrical signals. She had also learned something far more interesting. The network could be programmed. "Elena, how are you coming with the electrical amplification project?" The young engineer brightened. "Actually, I think I've figured it out. The metallic trees can store and conduct massive amounts of electrical energy, way more than they normally handle. If we can overload the network in a specific area, we can turn the forest itself into a weapon," Sarah finished. "Show me." Elena led her to a modified section of the electrical grid about 50 meters from their cave entrance. Over the past week, she had been carefully rewiring the natural connections between different plant species, using copper-rich vines as conductors and creating what amounted to a biological electrical circuit. "The system can store about 48 hours' worth of generated power," Elena explained, pointing to several modified trees whose metallic bark now glowed with a steady internal light. "When activated, it releases all of that energy at once through these output nodes." She indicated a series of modified electrical flowers positioned in strategic patterns around the area. "Discharge pattern?" Sarah asked, her scientific mind already seeing the tactical applications. "Grid-based, roughly 10-meter spacing. Anything standing in the discharge zone when the system activates gets hit with approximately 50,000 volts." Dr. Martinez whistled low. That would stop a charging elephant, let alone some local predators. But Sarah was already thinking beyond simple electrical traps. What if we could make the forest mobile? The others stared at her. "Mobile?" Webb asked. Sarah pulled out her notebook and began sketching rapidly. "I've been studying the root systems of the larger trees. They're not actually roots in the traditional sense. They're more like underground neural networks. The trees can actually move their position over time by extending and retracting these underground connections." "You're talking about making the trees walk?" Elena said incredulously. "Not walk exactly, but definitely repositioning themselves. Look at these growth patterns I've been tracking." She showed them detailed drawings of how certain tree clusters had shifted their positions over the past 3 weeks, always in response to changes in the electrical network's needs. "But that would take days or weeks," Webb pointed out practically. "Under normal circumstances, yes, but if we could trigger rapid growth using concentrated nutrients and electrical stimulation," Sarah's mind was racing through the possibilities. "Elena, could your electrical storage system provide enough power to supercharge biological growth processes?" "Theoretically, yes. But you're talking about providing weeks' worth of growth energy in a matter of hours. That kind of biological acceleration could kill the plants, or evolve them into something completely new," Sarah said quietly. Over the next 2 days, while Colonel Webb prepared their conventional defenses, sharpened stakes, concealed pits, and strategically positioned rock slides, Sarah and Elena worked frantically to implement what they had started calling Plan Forest. The first step was creating a concentrated nutrient solution using decomposed organic matter and mineral-rich soil from deep in the cave system. Sarah's xenobotanical knowledge allowed her to identify which compounds would most effectively stimulate rapid plant growth, while Elena figured out how to deliver precise electrical charges to trigger cellular acceleration. The second step was more complex, modifying the underground neural network to accept direct programming. This required Sarah to literally splice her data crystal into the biological electrical grid, using copper vines as data conduits to upload genetic information directly into the forest's natural communication system. "This is completely insane, Dr. Pick," Martinez observed as he watched Sarah carefully insert microscopic filaments from her data crystal into the exposed neural roots of a massive tree. "You're trying to turn a forest into a computer." "Not a computer," Sarah corrected, monitoring the electrical readings as her archived genetic data began flowing into the tree's biological systems. "A weapon platform. Every tree, every vine, every flower in this grid is about to become a programmable weapon system." The uploads took nearly 18 hours of continuous work. Sarah had to pace the data transfer carefully to avoid overwhelming the biological systems, while Elena monitored power levels to ensure the electrical grid could handle the massive information load. As the process continued, visible changes began occurring throughout their section of forest. Trees that had been 60 meters tall stretched toward 80 meters, their metallic bark developing new patterns and configurations. Vines grew thicker and stronger, with new types of thorns and electrical organs. The electrical discharge flowers evolved into something that looked more like organic artillery, with targeting organs that could track movement and adjust firing angles. Most dramatically, the root systems began extending and connecting in new patterns, creating what amounted to a biological neural network capable of coordinated tactical responses. Sarah could literally feel the forest awakening to new possibilities as her genetic archives integrated with Vidania's aggressive evolutionary processes. "Incoming!" Webb called from his perimeter observation post. "Multiple targets approaching from the north. Count is, Jesus, there must be 30 of them." Sarah looked up from her work, wiping sweat and tree sap from her hands. Through the forest canopy, she could see movement in the distance, large, dark shapes moving through the undergrowth with predatory grace. As they got closer, she could make out more details. The creatures were indeed roughly human-sized, but built like nothing that had ever evolved on Earth. They moved on 6 legs, with elongated bodies covered in what looked like natural armor plating. Their heads were triangular, with clusters of eyes that glowed with phosphorescent light. Most disturbing were their forelimbs, which ended in razor-sharp claws capable of shredding metal. "They're intelligent," Webb reported grimly. "Look at their movement patterns. They're using tactical formations, coordinated advances, diversionary tactics. These aren't just predators, they're soldiers." "How long until they reach the perimeter?" Sarah asked, watching the modified forest around their cave with growing anticipation. 5 minutes, maybe less. Sarah looked at Elena. "Is the system ready?" The engineer checked her makeshift control panel. A collection of copper wires and modified electrical flowers arranged to monitor the forest's weapon systems. All sectors show green. "Power levels at maximum. We're ready to field test your biological weapons platform. Everyone take cover inside the cave," Webb ordered. "Let's see what our scientist has cooked up for us." The group retreated to the safety of their cave while Sarah remained at the entrance, her hands resting on the organic control interface she had grown over the past 2 days. Through the bioelectrical network, she could feel every tree, every vine, every modified flower in their defensive grid. It was like having 30 hectares of forest as her personal weapon system. The first predator to enter their perimeter triggered a sensor vine that Sarah had positioned as an early warning system. Immediately, she felt the forest's attention focus on the intrusion, like a vast organism suddenly becoming aware of a threat. "Contact," she announced calmly, initiating defensive response. The forest came alive. Trees began repositioning themselves with impossible speed, their root systems pulling and pushing them into new configurations that created natural barriers and firing positions. Vines dropped from the canopy like serpents, their newly evolved electrical organs crackling with deadly energy. The modified discharge flowers rotated to track the moving predators, building up electrical charges for coordinated strikes. The first predator to fully enter the defensive grid was caught completely off guard when a vine wrapped around its neck and delivered 50,000 volts of bioelectrical energy. The creature's phosphorescent eyes dimmed instantly as it collapsed, its nervous system completely overloaded. But the others adapted quickly. Sarah watched in fascination as they began moving in patterns designed to avoid the most obvious plant threats, using their natural agility to leap between trees and avoid ground-based defenses. "They're learning our system," she observed. "Time for phase 2. She activated the mobile artillery flowers, and the forest erupted in coordinated electrical bombardment. Streams of bioelectrical energy arced between trees, creating a deadly light show that caught several more predators in lethal crossfire. The air filled with the sharp ozone smell of electrical discharge and the acrid smoke of burned organic matter. Still, the predators pressed forward, their pack intelligence allowing them to identify weak points in the defensive grid and exploit them with military precision. Sarah realized they were dealing with something far more sophisticated than simple animals. These creatures had experience fighting coordinated battles. "Elena, can you overcharge Sector 7? Sarah called. "They're trying to flank us through the eastern approach." "Already on it," Elena replied, manipulating her control interface. "Redirecting power flow to reinforce that sector." The trees in Sector 7 suddenly blazed with internal light as massive amounts of electrical energy flowed through their systems. When 3 predators tried to move through the area, the very ground beneath their feet became electrified as the root systems discharged their stored power. The creatures convulsed and fell, their armor plating actually glowing red-hot from the electrical overload. But Sarah's most dramatic surprise was yet to come. As the surviving predators regrouped for what looked like a final coordinated assault, she activated the biological weapons she had been developing. Modified spore pods throughout the forest burst open simultaneously, releasing clouds of paralytic toxins into the air. The electrical discharge flowers, now acting as delivery systems, used their bioelectrical fields to direct the toxic clouds towards specific targets with precision that would have been impossible using conventional weapons. The remaining predators found themselves breathing air that shut down their nervous systems within seconds. They collapsed where they stood, their phosphorescent eyes dimming as the paralytic compounds took effect. In less than 10 minutes, 30 intelligent predators had been eliminated by what amounted to a forest that had learned to fight like a military unit. "Threat neutralized," Sarah announced, feeling the forest's weapon systems powering down to standby mode. "All defensive sectors report clear." Colonel Webb emerged from the cave, staring at the transformed battlefield in amazement. The forest looked completely different from when the battle had started. Trees had literally moved to new positions. Vines had repositioned themselves for optimal firing angles, and the ground was scorched from electrical discharges. "Dr. Chen," he said quietly, "I think we need to have a serious discussion about expanding this system." 6 weeks after the Predator attack, Sarah Chen stood on a platform grown from living tree branches, looking out over what had once been ordinary alien forest and was now the most sophisticated biological weapons system in the galaxy. The canopy stretched endlessly in all directions, but she could feel through the bioelectrical network that nearly 50 square kilometers were now under her direct control. "Status report," she called down to Elena, who was working at an organic command center that had grown like a massive flower from the cave entrance. "All sectors operational," Elena responded, her fingers dancing across control surfaces made of modified plant matter that responded to bioelectrical impulses from her nervous system. "We're maintaining communication with 7 other human settlement groups through the extended route network. Resource-sharing protocols are active across all connected territories." "And the manufacturing capability?" Beyond our wildest projections, Dr. Martinez called up from the ground level, where he was overseeing what they had started calling the biological foundries. "The modified trees are producing refined metals, polymers, and complex chemical compounds at industrial levels. We're literally growing materials that shouldn't be possible." Sarah nodded with satisfaction. What had started as a desperate survival project had evolved into something that challenged every assumption about technological development. By combining her archived genetic data with Verdania's hyperadaptive plant life, she had created a living industrial base that could manufacture anything from basic tools to complex electronic components. The secret had been realizing that plants were already sophisticated chemical factories. Every tree was constantly producing complex organic compounds, processing raw materials from soil and atmosphere, and converting energy from biological and electrical sources. By reprogramming their genetic instructions and connecting them through bioelectrical networks, Sarah had essentially created a distributed manufacturing system that spanned continents. "Incoming transmission from the Northland settlement," Elena announced. "They're reporting contact with Zephyrian scouts." Sarah felt a chill run through her as she descended to the command center. For 6 weeks they had assumed the exile was permanent. that the Council would simply abandon them to survive or die on Verdania's surface. The presence of scouts suggested something more complex was happening. "Put them through," she ordered. The voice of Captain Morrison, leader of the Northlands group, crackled through speakers grown from modified acoustic flowers. "Chen, we've got 3 Zephyrian reconnaissance drones conducting overhead surveys of our territory. They've been mapping our installations for the past 2 days. Any attempt at communication?" Sarah asked. "Negative. They're staying at high altitude, just observing and recording." "But Sarah, they're going to see what we've built here. There's no way to hide a 50-kilometer weapons grid that glows with bioelectrical energy." Sarah exchanged glances with Colonel Webb, who had been coordinating defensive strategies across all connected human settlements. Over the past month, their biological communication network had linked nearly 2,000 of the 5,000 exiled humans into a coordinated survival community. "Any hostile action from the drones?" Webb asked. "Not yet, but if they're conducting reconnaissance, it means someone is planning something. Either a rescue mission or they're assessing whether we'd become a threat," Sarah finished grimly. Webb pulled up a tactical display grown from the cave wall itself, showing the positions of all known human settlements and the extent of their biological network coverage. "If the Council considers us a threat, we need to be prepared for military action." "With what?" Elena asked. "They have starships, energy weapons, orbital bombardment capability. We have plants. We have the most advanced biological weapon system ever created," Sarah corrected. "And we're on a planet that's essentially one massive ammunition depot." She gestured toward the forest around them. "Every tree, every vine, every flower in this network is programmable. We can literally grow weapons faster than they can manufacture them. But can we grow them fast enough?" Webb asked practically. Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking through the possibilities. Over the past weeks, she had been experimenting with increasingly ambitious modifications to the Verdania ecosystem. The latest experiments involved atmospheric manipulation, using modified plants to alter local weather patterns and atmospheric composition. "Alina, what's the current range of our atmospheric processes?" "About 15 kilometers radius around each major settlement. We can maintain localized weather control, atmospheric chemistry modification, and limited electromagnetic effects." "What about biological agents?" Elena looked uncertain. "You mean weaponized organisms?" "Sarah, that's crossing a pretty serious ethical line. The Council crossed that line when they exiled 5,000 people to a death world," Sarah replied sharply. "I'm not talking about biological weapons that target intelligent species. I'm talking about defensive systems that can neutralize hostile technology." She turned to address the broader group that had gathered around the command center. Over the past weeks, their original 12-person team had grown to nearly 50 specialists, as people with relevant skills had traveled through the forest network from other settlements to join the central research facility. "Listen carefully," she announced. "If the Zephyrians are conducting reconnaissance, we have maybe days before they decide what to do about us. We can either hide what we've built and hope they leave us alone, or we can demonstrate that exiling humanity was a serious mistake." "What are you proposing?" asked Dr. Robert Kim, who had been leading food production efforts. Sarah pulled out her notebook, which had grown from a simple journal to a comprehensive technical manual for biological warfare. "I'm proposing we give them a demonstration they'll never forget. Show them that human creativity doesn't need their technology to be dangerous." She began outlining her plan. The modified forest could already manipulate local weather patterns and generate massive electrical discharges. With some modifications, they could create localized electromagnetic pulses capable of disabling electronic systems. The atmospheric processes could produce chemical compounds that would interfere with life support systems. Most importantly, the biological network could coordinate these effects across hundreds of kilometers simultaneously. "You're talking about shooting down starships using plants," Webb said incredulously. "I'm talking about creating an environment where their advanced technology becomes a liability instead of an advantage," Sarah corrected. "Their weapons and ships depend on complex electronic systems. Their life support requires precise atmospheric control. Their communications rely on electromagnetic signals. All of those things can be disrupted by biological systems that they won't even recognize as weapons until it's too late." Elena was already working through the technical requirements. We'd need to modify the electromagnetic flowers to coordinate their discharge patterns, create a phased array effect across the entire network, and expand the atmospheric processes to cover a much larger area. Dr. Martinez added, maybe integrate them with the root systems to create underground chemical reservoirs. How long? Webb asked. Sarah looked at the forest around them, feeling the vast potential of the biological network through her neural interface. 72 hours to implement basic systems. Another week for full integration and testing. And if they attack before then we find out whether 6 weeks of biological engineering can stand up to galactic military technology. The next 3 days were a blur of intense activity as every human settlement connected to the network worked simultaneously on Sarah's modifications. The forest itself began changing visibly as new growth patterns optimized the system for coordinated electromagnetic effects. Trees grew taller and developed new metallic structures in their canopies. Vines rewired themselves into complex antenna arrays. Underground, root systems expanded and connected to create vast storage chambers for chemical compounds. Most dramatically, the network began developing what Sarah called biological quantum entanglement, a phenomenon where plants separated by hundreds of kilometers could coordinate their activities instantaneously through quantum-level bioelectrical effects. The mechanism was beyond her complete understanding, but the results were undeniable. The entire forest was becoming a single organism with a distributed intelligence. On the 4th day, the Zephyrian scouts made their move. Multiple contacts incoming, Elena reported from the command center. Looks like 3 scout ships, approaching from orbit. They're not trying to hide anymore. Sarah felt the forest network come alert around her. Through her neural interface, she could sense nearly 2,000 other humans connected to the system, each contributing their knowledge and skills to the collective defense. It was like having the entire human exile community as a single coordinated military unit. All settlements, this is Chen, she broadcast through the network. Implement defensive protocols. Let's show them what human ingenuity looks like when we're properly motivated. The Zephyrian ships descended through Verdania's atmosphere in standard reconnaissance formation, their advanced sensors conducting detailed scans of the human settlements below. From their perspective, they were observing primitives who had managed to survive on a death world for a few months, impressive but hardly threatening to a galactic civilization. They were completely unprepared for what happened next. The moment the ships entered the effective range of the biological network, the forest struck with coordinated precision that would have been impressive for conventional military forces and was absolutely unprecedented for biological systems. Modified electromagnetic flowers across 50 square kilometers synchronized their discharge patterns, creating a massive electromagnetic pulse that swept over the Zephyrian ships like an invisible storm. Their electronic systems designed for space combat against conventional weapons had no defense against a biological EMP that operated on frequencies and patterns they had never encountered. Direct hits on all targets. Elena reported as monitoring stations throughout the forest tracked the effectiveness of their attack. Their primary power systems are offline. Navigation appears compromised. But Sarah wasn't finished. As the disabled ships struggled to restore power, atmospheric processes throughout the network began releasing carefully designed chemical compounds into the surrounding air. Within minutes, a toxic fog had enveloped the area, creating conditions that would be lethal to Zephyrian physiology while remaining harmless to humans. Ships are attempting emergency ascent, Webb reported from tactical monitoring stations. They're trying to climb above the chemical cloud. Anticipated, Sarah replied calmly. She activated the next phase of her demonstration. High-altitude vines that had been growing throughout the forest canopy for the past week suddenly launched themselves skyward with explosive force, their modified cellular structure allowing them to achieve speeds and altitudes impossible for normal plant matter. Each vine carried specialized spore pods designed to attach to metallic surfaces and begin immediate acidic decomposition. The Zephyrian ships found themselves under attack by vegetation that moved like guided missiles and ate through their hull plating like organic nanotechnology. Their powerful engines, designed to propel them through the vacuum of space, were no match for biological weapons that had been specifically engineered to exploit the weaknesses of advanced technology. All 3 ships are down, Elena announced with amazement in her voice. Complete system failures across the board. They're not destroyed, but they're completely disabled. Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The demonstration had achieved exactly what she had intended. proving that human creativity could turn any environment into a weapon system capable of defeating far more advanced technology. "Open a communication channel," she ordered. "Let's talk to our visitors." Elena activated the acoustic flowers that served as long-range communication systems. Sarah's voice was transmitted directly to the downed Zephyrian ships through bioelectrical modulation of the planet's electrical network. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen, speaking for the human exile community on Vidania. Your ships have been disabled by biological weapons systems that we developed using nothing but plant matter and human ingenuity. Your crews are unharmed, but your technology has been rendered inoperative." There was a long pause before a response came through universal translators. "This is Commander Valkane of the Zephyrian Reconnaissance Fleet. How is this possible? You exiled us to what you thought was a death world?" Sarah replied, "You took away our technology and weapons, but you made one critical error." "What error?" Sarah looked out at the vast forest network that had become humanity's greatest achievement, feeling the connected consciousness of 2,000 human minds working together through biological interfaces that had never existed before. "You assumed that technology and weapons were what made humanity dangerous. You never understood that the most dangerous thing about humans is what we do when we have nothing left to lose." Commander Valkane of the Zephyrian Reconnaissance Fleet stood in what had once been the pristine command center of his scout ship, now overgrown with alien vines that pulsed with soft bioluminescent light. The organic matter had somehow interfaced directly with his ship's systems, creating a bizarre fusion of advanced technology and primitive plant life that should have been impossible according to every scientific principle he knew. "Status report," he demanded of his communications officer, though the metallic chittering sounds of his native language seemed oddly muted in the humid, oxygen-rich atmosphere that had somehow penetrated their sealed vessel. "All primary systems remain offline," Officer Kresh replied, his mandibles clicking nervously as he attempted to interface with controls that were now partially covered in responsive organic material. "The plant matter appears to be learning our technology faster than we can adapt countermeasures." Through the main viewport, Valkane could see the impossible forest that had become their prison. What his initial surveys had catalogued as a simple collection of oversized vegetation was clearly something far more sophisticated. The trees moved with purpose, repositioning themselves to maintain optimal visual monitoring of the downed ships. Vines extended and retracted in patterns that suggested active communication. Most disturbing, the electrical discharges flowing through the forest canopy appeared to be carrying complex data streams. "Sir," Kresh said quietly, "we're receiving another transmission from the human settlement." Valkane straightened his ceremonial armor, though the gesture felt hollow in their current circumstances. 3 days ago, he had been conducting routine reconnaissance of what should have been a failed human colony. Now he was trapped by weapons technology that challenged everything he thought he understood about biological systems. "Open the channel," he ordered. Sarah Chen's voice filled the command center through speakers that were now partially organic, her words carrying clearly despite the impossible integration of human vocal patterns with Zephyrian communication technology. "Commander Valkane, I hope your crew is adjusting comfortably to their accommodations. I wanted to inform you that we've been monitoring your attempts to re-establish communication with your fleet." Valkane felt his secondary stomach contract with worry. "What do you know of our fleet communications?" "Everything," Sarah replied matter-of-factly. "Your ship's quantum entanglement communicators are fascinating technology, but they operate on frequencies that are easily monitored by biological systems once you understand the underlying principles. We've been listening to every transmission you've attempted to send." The commander's four eyes widened in shock. Quantum entanglement communication was supposed to be absolutely secure, undetectable by any known technology. The idea that primitive humans using plant matter had managed to intercept quantum-encrypted military communications was beyond disturbing. It suggested technological capabilities that surpassed the most advanced species in the galaxy. "What do you want?" Valkane asked directly. "I want to make sure you understand the situation clearly before your fleet arrives," Sarah replied. "Based on your communications, I know that Admiral Thronekex is bringing a full battle group to assess what happened to your reconnaissance mission. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 assault carriers, and approximately 50,000 troops." Valkane's breathing apparatus wheezed involuntarily. That information was classified at the highest levels of Zephyrian military command. For the humans to know such specific details, how could you possibly know fleet deployment information? "Commander, your government has been conducting surveillance of our settlements for weeks. Did you really think we wouldn't implement counter-surveillance measures? Every probe you've sent into our atmosphere has been captured and studied. Every quantum transmission has been monitored and decoded. We know more about Zephyrian military capabilities than most of your own officers. Through the organic speakers, Velkane could hear background sounds from the human settlement. Voices speaking in multiple Earth languages, the hum of sophisticated machinery, the crackling of electrical systems. But underneath it all, he detected something else, the sound of rapid construction activity on a massive scale. "What are you building out there?" he asked. Sarah's response carried a note of satisfaction that made Velkane's auxiliary nerve clusters tingle with unease. "We're preparing a welcome for Admiral Thronekex and his battle group, something that will help them understand the new reality of human capabilities." "Chen," Velkane said carefully, "you must understand that military action against Galactic Council forces carries severe consequences. If you attack Council ships, you will be declaring war on the entire galactic community." "Commander," Sarah replied, her voice taking on a harder edge, "your government already declared war on humanity when you stripped us of our technology and exiled 5,000 people to a death world. We're simply responding in kind." Over the next week, Velkane watched through his ship's sensors as the forest around them underwent transformations that defied every biological principle he had studied during his military career. Trees that should have taken decades to reach maturity sprouted overnight, growing to heights that seemed to violate structural physics. Vines developed metallic properties that allowed them to conduct massive electrical charges. Most incredibly, the entire ecosystem appeared to be coordinating its growth according to some kind of master plan. "Sir?" Officer Kresh reported during their daily status briefing, "The organic matter interfacing with our systems has begun accessing our technical databases. Explain, the plant material appears to be learning our technology by directly accessing our computer systems. It's downloading technical specifications, weapon schematics, propulsion theory, everything we know about Starship construction and operation." Velkane felt a cold certainty settle in his primary stomach. The humans weren't just building defenses, they were learning to build starships from biological material. How fast are they processing the information? Exponentially faster than should be possible. Our databases contain thousands of years of accumulated technological development, but the organic systems are integrating it all within days. Through the viewport, Velkane could see the results of this impossible learning process. Structures that looked like organic starships were growing among the trees, their hull plating formed from modified bark that somehow achieved the strength and conductivity of advanced metals. Propulsion systems based on controlled electrical discharges were being tested throughout the forest canopy. Most disturbing, he could see what appeared to be weapons systems that combined biological growth with captured Zephyrian technology. "Dr. Chen," he broadcast on their daily communication session, "surely you realize that what you're building here cannot stand against a full Galactic Council battle group. Admiral Thronekex commands some of the most advanced ships in the galaxy." "Commander," Sarah replied, "Admiral Thronekex's ships are designed to fight other starships in the vacuum of space. They're not designed to fight an entire planet that has learned to build better starships overnight." As if to demonstrate her point, one of the organic vessels rose from the forest canopy, its living hull rippling with patterns of electrical energy. The ship moved with fluid grace that no mechanical vessel could match, its biological propulsion systems allowing it to change direction and acceleration in ways that violated conventional physics. "Impossible," Kresh whispered as they watched the organic ship perform maneuvers that would have torn apart any conventional vessel. But Velkane was beginning to understand something that filled him with deep foreboding. The humans hadn't just survived on Verdania, they had evolved. In less than 3 months, they had transformed from technological refugees into something that the galaxy had never encountered, a hybrid biological-technological civilization that could adapt and evolve at speeds that made conventional technological development obsolete. "Dr. Chen," he said quietly, "what do you intend to do when Admiral Thronekex arrives?" "I intend to give him the same choice that your government gave us," Sarah replied. "Adapt or die." On the 10th day after the arrival of the reconnaissance fleet, Admiral Thronekex's battle group dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Verdania's solar system. Through quantum communications that the humans were undoubtedly monitoring, Velkane listened to the Admiral's confident orders as 53 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy began their approach to what should have been a simple prisoner extraction mission. "Admiral," Velkane broadcast on emergency channels, I strongly recommend extreme caution. The human settlements have developed capabilities that exceed our current threat assessments. Commander Velkane, the Admiral replied in the crisp tones of absolute military authority. You have been trapped by primitives using plant matter for 10 days. Your assessment of their capabilities is clearly compromised. We will handle this situation appropriately. As the battle group entered Vidania's outer atmosphere, Velkane could see through his senses that the entire planet had begun to change. What had been localized human settlements were now connected by vast networks of biological infrastructure that spanned continents. The electrical activity in the forest had increased by orders of magnitude. Most ominously, space itself around the planet appeared to be shimmering with some kind of energy field. "Dr. Chen!" Velkine called out desperately. "You're about to engage 50,000 troops in the most advanced fleet in Zephyrian history. Surely there's some way to resolve this diplomatically." Sarah's response carried the weight of 3 months of exile, 3 months of transformation, and 3 months of proving that human creativity could turn any challenge into an opportunity. "Commander Velkine, your admiral is about to learn what every human child knows. When you corner someone with nothing left to lose, you'd better be prepared for them to fight with everything they've got." As the first of Admiral Thronekex's ships entered the planet's atmosphere, the forest around Velkane's disabled vessel began to glow with an internal light that suggested massive amounts of energy building towards some kind of coordinated release. In the distance, he could see dozens of organic ships rising from the canopy, their biological hulls pulsing with patterns that looked suspiciously like weapon charging sequences. "All units," he broadcast on emergency frequencies, "recommend immediate tactical withdrawal." The humans have... His transmission was cut off as every electronic system in his ship overloaded simultaneously, victim of an electromagnetic pulse that turned the entire planet into a weapons platform, capable of disabling technology from orbital distances. The last thing Velkine saw before his ship's systems failed completely was Admiral Thronekex's mighty battle group falling from the sky like leaves, their advanced technology rendered helpless by an enemy that had learned to fight with the weapons they thought primitives could never possess: intelligence, creativity, and the absolute determination to survive. 3 months after the Battle of Vidania, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in what had once been the Galactic Council chambers on the neutral world of Kepler Prime. The massive crystalline hall, designed to accommodate representatives from hundreds of different species, now pulsed with organic growth that had somehow learned to interface with the existing technology while maintaining the architectural grandeur that made the chamber function for galactic diplomacy. Sarah wore robes grown from modified Vidania silk plants, the fabric shifting color based on her bioelectric field and emotional state. Around her neck, her data crystal pendant had evolved into something far more complex, a living interface that connected her directly to the biological networks that now linked human settlements across dozens of worlds. Across the negotiation platform, Admiral Thronekex sat in modified restraints that kept him comfortable while preventing any attempt at escape. His proud Zephyrian features showed the strain of 3 months as a prisoner of war, but his 4 eyes remained alert and intelligent. Beside him, representatives from 12 other galactic species waited with varying degrees of nervousness and fascination. "The terms are simple," Sarah announced, her voice carrying through organic speakers that had grown throughout the chamber over the past week. "Complete withdrawal of all Galactic Council forces from human space. Recognition of human sovereignty over all worlds we currently occupy. And formal acknowledgement that humanity now possesses technological capabilities equal to or exceeding any member species." The Altarian delegate, a being resembling a crystalline spider with delicate psychic tendrils, projected its thoughts through universal translators. "Dr. Chen, surely you understand that what you're demanding would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity has been in space for less than a century. Humanity has been adapting and evolving for millions of years," Sarah corrected. "What we've accomplished on Vidania in 3 months demonstrates that when humans are properly motivated, we can achieve technological advancement at rates that make conventional development timelines obsolete." To emphasize her point, Sarah gestured toward the viewing ports that showed Vidania's orbital space. What had been empty vacuum 3 months ago was now filled with organic structures that defied every architectural principle known to galactic engineering. Living space habitats grew like flowers between the stars, their biological hulls processing cosmic radiation into useful energy while providing perfect environments for human colonization. "Your bioships are impressive," Admiral Thronekex admitted grudgingly. but they cannot possibly match the industrial capacity of established galactic civilizations. Sarah smiled, an expression that the assembled delegates had learned to find deeply unsettling. Admiral, show them the production figures. Elena Vasquez, now serving as Sarah's chief technology officer, approached the central display platform. Her appearance had changed dramatically over the past months. Neural interfaces grown from modified coral allowed her to control vast technological networks through direct thought, while her clothing incorporated living computers that processed information at quantum speeds. Current human industrial output across 17 worlds, Elena announced as organic displays grew from the chamber walls, has exceeded the combined production of the 5 largest galactic economies. Our biological manufacturing systems can produce advanced technology faster than conventional factories can produce raw materials. The numbers that flowed across the living screens drew gasps from delegates who understood industrial economics. Humanity had not simply recovered from their exile. They had achieved manufacturing capacity that surpassed civilizations that had been developing industry for thousands of years. Impossible, said the cetacean delegate, a whale-like being whose natural habitat required a tank of specialized liquid. No species can achieve such rapid industrial expansion. No species that relies on conventional technology, Sarah agreed. But we're not using conventional technology anymore. She activated her neural interface, and the chamber itself began to demonstrate. The walls, which appeared to be simple stone and crystal, suddenly revealed their true nature as complex biological systems. Organic circuits glowed with internal light, showing data flows that connected the chamber to networks spanning multiple star systems. The decorative elements began moving and reshaping themselves, demonstrating that every surface in the room was actually a sophisticated computer system grown from modified plant matter. We don't build our technology, Sarah explained as the delegates watched in fascination and growing alarm. We grow it. We don't manufacture our ships. We plant seeds that become vessels capable of faster-than-light travel. We don't construct our habitats. We cultivate living ecosystems that adapt automatically to any environment. Dr. Martinez, whose geological expertise had evolved into something approaching planetary engineering, stepped forward to address the assembly. Every world we've colonized in the past 3 months has been terraformed using biological systems that work faster and more efficiently than any mechanical technology. We can turn a dead rock into a garden world in weeks rather than centuries. And every world we terraform becomes part of our defensive network, Colonel Webb added, his military bearing unchanged despite the organic augmentations that allowed him to coordinate defense strategies across multiple star systems simultaneously. Attack any human settlement, and you're attacking a planet that can fight back. The implications hung heavy in the chamber's artificially maintained atmosphere. Humanity hadn't just survived their exile. They had emerged as a technological power that operated on principles the galaxy had never encountered. Their biological technology could evolve and adapt in real time, making conventional military and economic strategies obsolete. What guarantee do we have? Asked the Regelian delegate, a tall humanoid with skin like polished obsidian, that humanity will not use these capabilities aggressively against peaceful species? Sarah considered the question seriously, feeling through her neural interface the consciousness of nearly 10,000 humans now connected to biological networks across human space. Their thoughts and emotions flowed through her awareness like a vast symphony of human experience. Fear and determination, curiosity and caution, anger at their treatment, but also hope for a better future. The same guarantee that we had when you exiled us to Verdania, she replied finally. None. The galaxy operates on strength and the willingness to use it. 3 months ago, you thought you could eliminate humanity as a potential threat by stripping us of our technology and abandoning us on a death world. She gestured again toward the organic displays showing the scope of human expansion. Now you discover that our greatest strength was never our technology. It was our ability to adapt, evolve, and turn any challenge into an opportunity. You taught us that survival in this galaxy requires the ability to defend ourselves. We learned that lesson very well. Admiral Throne Kex leaned forward in his restraints. Dr. Chen, if we accept your terms, what assurance do we have that humanity will abide by galactic law and participate constructively in interstellar relations? The same assurance that any sovereign species provides, Sarah replied. Our word, backed by our demonstrated ability to enforce it. She paused, allowing the full weight of human capabilities to settle in the delegates' minds. The difference is that our enforcement capabilities now exceed those of any other single species, and possibly any combination of species. "You're threatening the entire galaxy," accused the Vegan delegate, a plant-like being whose natural communication involved chemical releases that the chamber's organic systems had learned to translate. "We're offering the galaxy a new model for technological development," Sarah corrected. "Biological technology that grows and adapts rather than becoming obsolete. Industrial systems that can terraform worlds and build starships in weeks rather than decades. Defensive networks that make war costly enough that diplomatic solutions become more attractive." Elena activated new displays showing human settlements across 17 worlds. Each world showed thriving ecosystems that supported both human populations and the native life forms. Technological infrastructure that enhanced rather than replaced natural systems, and defensive capabilities that made traditional conquest impossible. "Look at what we've accomplished in 3 months," Sarah continued. "We've proven that advanced technology and environmental harmony aren't mutually exclusive. Our biological systems enhance planetary ecosystems rather than destroying them. Our manufacturing processes actually improve the worlds where they operate." "And if we refuse your terms?" Admiral Thronekex asked quietly. Sarah's expression remained calm, but the organic systems throughout the chamber pulsed with energy that suggested vast forces held in careful restraint. "Then you continue to operate under the assumption that humanity can be threatened, controlled, or eliminated through superior force. The last group that made that assumption discovered how costly that mistake could be." The delegates exchanged glances, communications, and psychic impulses as they processed the full implications of humanity's transformation. In 3 months, a species they had considered primitive had not only survived exile to a death world, but had emerged with technological capabilities that challenged the existing galactic order. "We need time to consult with our governments," the Altarian delegate projected. "Of course," Sarah agreed graciously. "Take all the time you need, but understand that every day you delay, human technology continues to evolve. What seems impossible today will be commonplace tomorrow. What appears threatening now will seem quaint compared to what we accomplish next month." She gestured toward the viewing ports again, where construction could be seen on what appeared to be an artificial world being grown in space. Its biological structure already larger than most conventional space stations and still expanding visibly. The galaxy can choose to adapt to the reality of human technological advancement, or it can continue to operate under assumptions that are no longer valid. Either way, humanity will continue to grow, evolve, and prove that the most dangerous thing you can do to humans is underestimate our ability to turn any challenge into an opportunity. As the delegates filed out of the chamber to begin what would undoubtedly be the most complex diplomatic negotiations in galactic history, Sarah remained on the platform, feeling through her neural interface the vast network of human consciousness that now spanned multiple star systems. 3 months ago, she had been an exiled scientist with nothing but a data crystal and an unbreakable determination to survive. Now she was the de facto leader of a technological civilization that had achieved in months what most species took millennia to accomplish. The galaxy had tried to eliminate humanity by stripping them of their tools and abandoning them to die. Instead, they had discovered that humans didn't need tools to be dangerous. They needed challenges that forced them to prove that human creativity, determination, and adaptability were the most powerful forces in the universe. The Galactic Council had thought they were signing humanity's death warrant when they exiled them to Vidania. They had actually signed the birth certificate of the most advanced technological civilization the galaxy had ever seen. One that operated on principles no other species had ever imagined, and possessed capabilities that made conventional assumptions about power and technology obsolete. As Sarah looked out at the stars, feeling the consciousness of thousands of humans connected through biological networks that spanned light years, she smiled. The galaxy was about to learn what human determination could accomplish when properly motivated, and they were going to learn it whether they wanted to or not.